What was a pivotal moment in your own life? Because I noticed this optimistic undertone to everything that you say, whether it's like surround yourself with the right people.
Right.
If you get laid off, you need them more and this and that. What would you say is a time where you felt like you had risen from the ashes or had some sort of negative thing and like practiced some sort of thing to get through to it that's contributed to this philosophy?
It was early on in this journey to broadcasting. I was 32, 33, really old to try to get into broadcasting. I had 3 little kids, and I had found a season of life where I had some gumption, and I said, I'm going to try some things. And so I went downtown Atlanta. I was living in Atlanta suburbs. I go down, and I walk in one day to this huge office building, and I go up to this receptionist, young girl in her 20s, and I said, and I'll make this name up, is Don so-and-so in today? And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, he is. Do you have an appointment? I go, no, but we have some mutual friends. And if he's got 2 minutes, you can put me on a clock, tell him I just want to say hi to him for 2 minutes. And it so kind of befuddled her that I talked my way in it, and she goes, okay. So next thing I know, this guy pops into the lobby and he's looking at me literally like that. And I go, hey, Ken Coleman, I know this person, this person, this person. Hey, I want to tell you something. I own my own business. I don't want you to pay me anything. I'm not even looking for a job. First thing out of my mouth. And he's kind of looking at me, and I go, I'm wondering if there's something that I can do a few days a week for a couple hours at a time to just volunteer, because I just want to learn this business, and that's all I want. I can give you my resume, references. We have these mutual friends. He looked at me. He was like, are you serious? And I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, man, sure. He's like, give me your email. I'll email you a time we can come meet and we'll talk through it. So fast forward, I do that, and I end up going in 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the ESPN radio affiliate. That's what this was. I love sports. And I start volunteering. I'm answering screening calls. I'm doing YouTube research for the guys that are on the air. I'm just in the building, and it led to me getting on the air. They were sending me to Falcons training camp, to the SEC basketball championship here in Nashville. And I was doing live call-ins, and these guys, they just began to like me, and they knew that I was just trying to learn and get into the game, and I didn't need anything from them. And so like, you're pretty good on the air. And so they put me on. So one day I get back in, it was my day to be in. I think it was a Wednesday. And this guy, this program director, is the guy that I met in the lobby. And he calls me in his office, and he had this weird look on his face. And he just looked at me and goes, hey, you got to stop. And there's no tension, nothing's happened. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you got to stop. You're not going to be on the air anymore. I go, oh, okay. I said, hey, by the way, I am sorry. Your host put me on there. They just asked me if I'd do it. I said, and he goes, no, I know. You've not done anything wrong. I've already talked to them. They shouldn't have done that. We have a company policy. No non-employees are allowed to be on the air, which again, made total sense to me. But it was the way in which he talked to me. And then he said this. He goes, I don't know why you keep coming in. He goes, you've been great. You're a good guy. You got a lot going for you. I don't know why you're not focused on your business. You don't have the talent to make it in a number 8 market. And it just devastated me. So I walk out, and I was spinning, emotionally spinning. Why is he doing this? Okay, I get the policy, but why did he say that? Is he right? Am I delusional? Am I wasting my time 3 days a week coming here? What am I doing? I'm 33. I don't have a broadcasting degree. I don't have any experience. What am I doing? And I began to just really go inward. Like, dude, you're delusional. Wake up, smell the coffee, and go be a good husband and a dad and grow your business and go another direction. This is a fool's errand. This is where I'm at. So I go home, and I really didn't want my wife to see it. I was so embarrassed. I was ashamed. And so it was time to cut the grass. And I remember going to my garage, get my lawnmower out. And I went out and I just zoned out, back and forth, just self-pity. And about 10 minutes in, the thought hit me, do you think that you have the talent? Do you really think you have it? Are you willing to see if he's right? Are you willing to see? Is he right or is he wrong? Are you willing to figure it out? And for whatever reason, I summoned a little bit of courage there. And I was like, okay, and came up with a few ideas. And I don't want to go into it for sake of too long of an answer, but I came up with a couple ideas on the rest of that lawn mowing session that ended up turning into my first book and a pretty successful podcast that then got me on the air in North Atlanta. That led to some amazing things, and Dave Ramsey eventually calling me. So the reason I am the way I am is moments like that where I had to choose, right? Do I believe in me? And am I willing to prove it? And it's not that I was super positive and that I was this, because I wasn't. I was miserable. I was insecure, all these things. But I did choose in that moment to prove it. So I was either going to prove that he was right, that I didn't have the talent, or I was going to prove that I was right. And I was willing to deal with that and get to that answer so that when I'm an old man, I don't live with regret.
Did you ever see that guy again?
Never have.
Have you been curious to reach out to him?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to be very vulnerable.
Yeah.
There have been multiple times that I've wanted to call him. And in my mind, I've got it that I would be classy, but I would say, hey, just want to let you know that what you said hurt me. You were wrong. And I'm calling to tell you that you're wrong, not out of spite, but that you don't ever crap on somebody else like that again, because words matter. And that's what I want to do. And I have resisted it. And the first time is when I found out that I was going to be the first person to ever sit in Dave Ramsey's chair after 20 some years. And I was with Rachel Cruz and another one of our Ramsey personalities at the time. And it was like a big deal. And I had radio experience. They were the money people. And so my job was just to get them in and out of the break because they had no experience doing it. And I could do it, but it was a big deal. And yeah, there's been multiple times, 3-time best-selling author,
But what's holding you back?
I don't think that's right. I don't think it's necessary. I have gotten to a place through therapy and some maturity that nothing good comes from that phone call. And no matter how classy I play it out in my mind, I think it's an act of pride.
Why not send an email that you can
Same
proofread?
deal. Same
Because
thing.
I tend to think that sending that, you could look at it two
Well, what do
ways.
you think
One,
it accomplishes? And I mean this.
Okay, from a
honestly.
utilitarian perspective.
Yeah, I'd love to know.
Yeah, I think it does make sense for him to get the perspective that, hey, I can actually be incorrect and I shouldn't just shoot someone down with, a not super convicted argument to make them feel bad. But also I think that it depends on how you frame it. So for example, if you call him and you're like, I was right. And if I was right, what does that mean you were? It means you were wrong. Like, there's a way that you can, he loves that. He loves that. But it basically is just establishing a winner and a loser. It doesn't need to be that way. You could say, hey, look, after our phone call, you motivated me to actually go and try my own thing. And I did, and it worked. So I wanted to thank you because think about it. You are where you are today because of that.
Interesting.
So even though
I'd be more willing to take that tact.
Even though it hurt and it sucked and it created some wounds that turned into scars, eventually it ended up working in your favor by a lot. Who knows what would have happened if you stuck with that network?
No one has any idea. That would help me with other wounds? Because I'm going to be really vulnerable here. Because this is actually refreshing that you're challenging me on this. Yeah. Maybe the audience learned something. I'm real time in this, folks. Oh. These guys are challenging me. I deal with the voice. We all have these voices that we deal with. And that these come from, primal wounds and things of that nature. Mine is, I'm not good enough. Just being honest.
Yeah.
So that comes, and I don't want to, get into this. It's not a psychotherapy session, but it comes from real things that have happened to me in my life. And I am actively right now in therapy. I do it seasonally from time to time. And I just think this is very interesting timing. So I'm asking you guys, knowing what I just told you, do you think that would actually be healing for me to send it? I like your approach, Jack. Do you think that would be a sense of healing? If I were to word it that way, to go, I'm acknowledging that you hurt me deeply, and yet I also want to thank you and release that. Because I don't think I've ever released it. I think it's a chip still on my shoulder.
I think the solution or the answer to the feeling of not being good enough or some sort of imposter syndrome is humility.
Yeah.
Is understanding that you are, you deserve nothing. It's just, you have to accept the fact that you put yourself wherever you are. And I think that the humility will essentially solve that. You can thank him. And it's also kind of, in a sense, taking responsibility because you ended up making the decision to put you where you are today.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he gave you a great lesson, great experience that you're able to share with so many people.
Yeah.
And you owe that to him and him saying those really hurtful words. So I think in a way it's a blessing in disguise where back then it was
I agree
devastating.
with that.
Like you grew so much because I would send the email. Or if you take it a step further, send the email and say, I'd also like to take you for a coffee or something like that, to take him out and show your appreciation in hindsight. And I bet through that experience, he'll change a lot too.
Interesting. Wow, this is
It's also
great.
been a long time since that happened,
Yeah.
so he could be
guys.
a completely different person, you know?
True.
Yeah. But you understand, my concern is I don't want to be prideful. And you answered, that's the humility. I want to act in a humble way here.
But imagine this. Imagine he shares his perspective years later, and it's not what you.
That's interesting.
Where he said, "I'm sorry, I said those things. The reason why was because I got.
I had a
pressure
bad
from-"
morning.
Yeah,
you know, like
Isn't that true?
Yeah,
it could be
but
anything.
it could be something so stupid of like,
Yeah.
oh, got in a fight with a spouse this morning. I was in a really bad mood. As soon as you walked out, I regretted it, but I was too prideful to say anything. And, it's something you have no idea what's going on through his mind at that day.
Yeah. That's well said.
Or where pressure was coming from like someone else got jealous that you did a better job than them, and he had to save this person who was giving him an earful, and you weren't the employee. And there could have been so many dynamics that you just had no idea about that I bet now he would share. And if you do reach out to him, I'd love to hear about a follow-up.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to commit to it.
Good.
And I'm going to, because I trust you guys on this, I'm going to send you, if you'll allow me, I want to send you the draft.
Deal.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about it.
Yeah.
And both of you are completely objective.
Yeah.
You're perfect. Like, I wouldn't want my wife to read it. She's got too much invested in me. So I will do that. I'm going to send you a draft within a week of this conversation. I'm trying to give myself a little time, but I need to act on it quickly, actually. Within 72 hours, team's back there. Somebody hold me accountable. I'm going to send an email to both of you if you'll allow me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I want your honest feedback. And I'm going to send it.
I'm honored.
Boy,
Amazing.
wow, this
That's
is
so cool.
crazy.
That's
I was
so cool.
supposed to do this selfishly, I think, for that.
That's so
That's
cool.
amazing.
But I hope our audience gets
Yeah.
something from this, because I love that you challenged me on that, and I'm learning real time. Now it's interesting. Now I'm an evangelist for therapy, because I'm literally doing weekly therapy right now and digging on this stuff at 50 years of age. Not because I'm in crisis. I'm not in an area of crisis right now in my life, but I'm seeking to be better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of responsibility and going through different seasons of my life, right? And dealing with grief of my oldest son being in college, right? And some of that stuff. And just being okay with that. Like, it's hard to see my boy go. I'm proud of him. He's crushing it,
Yeah.
So all that to say, this is the example of spending time with. Now, this is a professional podcast. However, I'm grateful and blessed to be in the orb that I'm in, that I get to be on your show, have this conversation, and this is the whole point.
I actually did something similar with the guy who hired me when I was 18, when I was doing data entry, and he gave me an earful when I wanted to quit. I came in like a week later and told him that I wasn't happy doing this. It didn't feel right for me and I wanted to quit. And he gave me an earful. And he told me the story that he mentored another guy. And this guy was like in his late 40s, early 50s at the time. And he mentored another guy. And this guy had said the same thing, that he wanted to quit, that it wasn't right. And the guy's like, you have to stick with it, because if you're not able to overcome this hurdle, you're going to go sideways, get to another hurdle, not be able to overcome that, get to the other hurdle, and you're going to be moving sideways throughout your life. And it's really important when you get to a hurdle to overcome it.
Yeah.
And so he talked me into staying into this job. And he said, by the way, at the end of that conversation, he's like, by the way, the other guy ended up quitting. Guess what? He ended up getting a divorce. He ended up coming back to me years later, trying to get his job back. We couldn't hire him back. I don't know where he is now, but I'm like, I don't want to be broke and get a divorce later. So I stayed there. And every time I'd go in to quit, which was like every 3 weeks, just to talk to him, would give me that same sort of spiel. And I think it was after about 2 months, I finally had enough. I wrote up a letter. I gave it to him. He tried to talk to me. I couldn't do it because I knew he could talk me back into it. But I sent him, I found him on LinkedIn. This is maybe 2 years ago. I found him on LinkedIn. I didn't tell him how much that impacted me about his whole speech and whatnot, but I did thank him for the opportunity. And just him giving me that chance changed my life of really figuring out what I didn't want in a job, which is a desk job, data entry, fluorescent lights, back office accounting. I hated it. But if it were not for that experience, I wouldn't be here today.
Agree.
So I just thanked him for that. And he got back to me and it was like, I see you on YouTube. I'm glad you're doing so well. That makes me really happy to hear. So maybe I tell him how much it affected me, but just sending him that thank you was really important.
No, I think that's
It's cool to find him years later.
While you were talking, I want the audience to hear, I just got a little takeaway. Grit is earned, not summoned. And thankfully, we have people in our life that force us into places where we have to choose. And so it's back to your question. Oh, are you positive? I'm not the most positive guy on the planet, but I do think I'm really gritty. And it's because I've had multiple opportunities to either, as your boss told you there, that guy told you there, to either jump through it, go through the hurdle, go over the mountain, whatever. That's important stuff, because on the other side of that, you start stacking grit. Do you know what I mean? You can't just summon grit. The only way to get grit is to earn it. In other words, choose to walk forward. You walk forward. The other guy went sideways and walked away. I think that's a profound story of one decision.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I like the idea of being forced into a position where you have to choose.
Yeah.
That's actually exactly the same, both you guys, as when I was working in the restaurant. I was a busser. I really wanted to be a waiter. The waiters earned a lot more than the bussers. I took the waiting exam several times, failed every single time, but at the same time, I thought that the management had something against me because they were passing other people that I was clearly more qualified than to be waiters.
Yeah.
And then finally, after, I guess being in despair because I was this like lowly busser, not making a good living, I was like, I feel like I should do so much more than this. I tried out e-commerce, I failed. I tried out trading, I failed. I tried out a different business, I failed. And then eventually I emailed Graham and it worked. And it was because I was forced to make a decision because I was so dissatisfied with where I was in life. Whereas if maybe they had just promoted me to being a server, I would have gotten a little bit more complacent. I mean, I was a full-time student at the same time as working a good amount of hours in the restaurant. So maybe I would have been, okay, I'll just go to the college. I'll do the normal route. But it forced me to make a decision and to finally continue trying things until one of the things worked out.
I love that. Hard times force us to choose. You going to do hard things or you going to do the easy thing? See, the easy thing is to retreat. That's easy. Walk away. I'm going to go over here. And by the way, we can really talk ourselves into how smart that is. You can really spin that up. Well, I did it for this and this. And at some point, I think you just have to choose to do hard things. And that's where grit comes from. By the way, that's where opportunity lies. And I think that's one of the things I'm fearful for my kids' generation is we've screwed up. I'm talking about my generation in parenting, because I grew up in the 80s and I do see a shift. I'm not trying to sound like a boomer and take us another direction, but I would say really quickly that we have removed hardship and the opportunity to step into fear. And that's a dangerous thing for a society. Hard things lead to great things.